All right, let's get to it. All right, if you can hear me, if you can't hear me, let me know in the chat. Also, as soon as Daniel chimes in today, let us know if audio is working well. Just a little housekeeping to get started here. Today's webinar on optimizing Gatsby build performance with observability from New Relic. It will be recorded. We will send this out probably within 48 hours once we get captioning done and everything for it. So if you do have to leave a little early, it will be sent out. The other thing though is Q&A. We will be answering Q&A all session long. We'll also have some time reserved for it at the end. But if you do have a question, feel free to ask it, but please put it in the Q&A section in Zoom webinar. It's a little bit easier to track rather than the chat. All right, without that further intro, let's get to Daniel Kim, Senior Development Relations Engineer at New Relic. He's going to be giving us some awesome talk today on optimizing Gatsby build performance and going through a demo of some of New Relic's great observability tools. What's going on, Daniel?
Hi, I'm doing great. How about you? I'm in sunny San Francisco and the sun just came up, which is really nice.
Perfect. I'm in, might have seen a snowflake actually in Boston. So we'll see.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to talk about observability and Gatsby builds today. So just to introduce myself, my name is Daniel. I'm a senior developer advocate at New Relic. And yeah, today I'm going to talk a little bit about observability. So just a bit of background, I used to work at a startup in the Jamstack space. So I'm like very intimately aware of kind of the challenges that enterprises have or larger websites have when they build on the Jamstack. So today I wanted to kind of showcase some of my newly learned skills as kind of a DevOps like observability person to apply some of those skills to the Jamstack to better improve your site's build performance. So while I'm giving my talk, I'm going to have a link in the chat as well as in my slides to create a New Relic account. So today's demo will be interactive, so you can actually follow along at home. So if you want to go ahead and follow along at home, you can make a New Relic account that's forever free in the link below. And then if you have that, you'll be all set to follow along with the demo. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get started with my presentation. So if you're here, you probably know what Gatsby is, but I will give a short overview of what it is. So Gatsby is a static site generator. I know that's not what the PMM, the product marketing folks at Gatsby want me to say, but it's now a dynamic site generator, but it's kind of, it combines the best of both worlds in my opinion. So basically what Gatsby does is that it takes a bunch of data sources, wherever your data lives, whether it's Sanity or WordPress or Shopify, Contentful, Drupal, et cetera, and it gets it into the content mesh that Gatsby has. And then what Gatsby does is that it compiles all your data and your React components into static assets that you can deploy into a CDN of your choice, whether that's Gatsby Cloud, Netlify, S3, et cetera, et cetera. However, compiling things into static assets doesn't mean that it's a static website. You can actually get dynamic and interactive components into your website with Gatsby. So it uses something called hydration. So whenever Gatsby builds are built, a Node.js server spins up, and basically it creates like a bunch of HTML files, CSS, JavaScript, and images, and it takes it turns it into like static HTML. And basically at Gatsby, what it does is it hydrates when the user accesses it into a React application. So users are interacting with the React application at the end, but it still is able to be loaded onto the user's computer as fast as like a static website. So what this is done by Gatsby producing two different versions of your website. So it does create a static website that it sends to the user when it first accesses your website, which is just a static website like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and images. And while the user is interacting with that, Gatsby basically there's a React DOM server. So that takes over the static website that hydrates the HTML. So it adds like event listeners, and it turns your static website into a full React application. And after that first page load, it turns it into like a interactable like page requests that are basically done that are DOM updates that are managed by React. So it goes from a static website into an interactive website. But today, what we're going to talk about specifically is Gatsby builds. So what goes on in that process that turns all those like data and styling templates into a static website? So how it works is that there are node objects that are sourced from various data sources, whether it's like WordPress or Shopify, that you define in the Gatsby config file as well as the Gatsby node file. And then a schema is inferred from all of the objects that are collected. And then pages are created based on like various components in your site or in the themes that you are using. And then GraphQL queries are extracted and run to provide data for all of your pages. And then static files are finally created and bundled in the public directory. So the build includes a bunch of things. So it includes minified files, transformed images, JSON files with information and data for every page, and static HTML for each page. However, when we build small websites that are like less than 50 pages, our build times are pretty manageable. So when I build my personal blog on Gatsby, it takes around 2 minutes for it to build. But when we talk about larger websites, for example, New Relic stocks websites or open source websites and developer sites, things get a little bit more dicey. Things are not as easy as 2-minute builds, sadly. So a little bit of stats around New Relic's usage of Gatsby internally is that we have 5 different web properties that are powered by Gatsby. And we get over 30 PRs that are merged every day with content updates in our various web properties. We have over 325,000 sessions per month on our websites with 700,000 page views, 8,000 markdown files, 100 plus plugins, and uncountable numbers of images. Like we have very, very large Gatsby websites. And the problem with that is that the average build time for each of our web properties, especially our doc site, is over an hour. So our doc site takes over an hour and 45 minutes to build end to end without caching. So that means that one commit, if there's no caching or optimization involved, involves 1 hour and 45 minutes to go live. So it's a long, long time to wait just to wait for a content change. So how do we make our site build more efficiently? That's the questions that a lot of our engineers had when our Gatsby site wasn't building as quickly as it needed to keep up with all the content changes that we were having at New Relic. So it just turns out that we work at a company that specializes in software that allows you to analyze, troubleshoot, and analyze and optimize your entire software stack. So New Relic is a product that focuses on observability. So you might be wondering, what is observability? So observability, simply put, is the ability to measure the internal states of a system by examining its outputs. So if you think of software as this black box that you deploy in the cloud, it has a bunch of inputs and outputs. And there might be an output that might be very worrying, which is marked as red. So Gatsby Build New Relic looks at all of the inputs and outputs in your Gatsby application to help you figure out if something is going really, really slow or something is not working, what could be the point, like the root cause of that particular issue. So me and the team at New Relic built a plugin called Gatsby Build New Relic that takes data from every single build. So you might be familiar with this screenshot. It's basically a bunch of logs produced by Gatsby. And you might be wondering, okay, so I only look at this when there's a bunch of errors, there's a bunch of red, and you're like, oh, I don't know what went wrong. But, you don't really look at it otherwise. Well, at least I didn't when I was building on Gatsby. However, these individual data points are super, super useful when you collect them and you save them. So when you save and compare data as for different builds, things get a little bit more interesting. So let's say, for example, that I wanted to deploy a new feature or I wanted to build my website in a new way, and I want to see how it's going to impact my build times. So what this plugin could do is you could compare the build times for different parts of the build process for different changes. So you could correlate, okay, so this change will make sourcing and transforming nodes for my website 10% higher, which would drastically slow down your build times. So being able to save and comparing data is really, really important when you want to build like themes or build for large websites that scale. So what we needed to do was a solution that turned a bunch of logs that were in like our Gatsby Cloud or Netlify account and turned it into structured data. And we could actually store and query log data. So this is what we built. So we built this plugin that leveraged Winston.js. So Winston.js is an open source piece of software that turns logs into structured logs and can send them anywhere. So we leveraged Winston to structure and clean our data and then send it to New Relic, which is the platform that we use to save and query our logs. So this is an example of a raw log. So it's like a string with a timestamp, a success, and like the actual build step, as well as the time associated. So that by itself is not the most useful. So what Winston does is that it parses it, so it makes a lot more sense. So it turns it into various JSON objects that we can query in the New Relic later. And then we actually send it to New Relic 1. So this is where we actually store all of your data in a database. And basically with New Relic, what you can do is you can actually search and compare data points from various builds that you've had in the past to compare and contrast if you like turn on a feature flag or if you implement the new feature, how things perform versus the baseline. So yeah, that's what like a New Relic 1 does, and that's what our plugin does for logs. But what if we wanted to dig a little bit deeper beyond what information is in the logs and really figure out what parts of our builds are causing slowdowns and like what parts of our builds are not causing us to be able to commit changes as quickly as we need to. So there is a concept of tracing. So tracing is really cool because it basically tracks the activity for individual transactions within a particular app as it flows through like various parts of the app. So for example, when Gatsby builds websites, it runs a Node.js server to turn all the different parts of data into a static website. So what tracing can do is it can actually track what APIs, what plugins, all the different granular pieces of information to actually build your website. So I didn't know this until I started working at New Relic and I was looking at our doc site, but Gatsby comes built in with performance tracing. So you don't have to actually do anything different to your Gatsby site to start taking advantage of this because this is already built in. So Gatsby is instrumented with something called Open Tracing, which is this open source of framework to do tracing within different applications. It was originally developed by Google. And what that allows you to do is see deeper into your application. So let me give you an example. So we take this like line of log, right? It says success, source, and transform nodes, 12 seconds. That's a very, very long time to source and transform nodes for a smaller application. So I'm like, okay, so I know this piece of information, but what exactly, like what causes this particular step to take so long? So this is where traces can come in handy. So when you have a bunch of plugins that source data for your large application, you really don't know through logs which plugin or which part of your app is causing the source and transform nodes to take so long. So what traces allow you to do is figure out, okay, so is it Gatsby plugin MDX that's causing the issue? Gatsby source sanity, Gatsby source WordPress, like it'll tell you what part of your app is doing this. And here's how it does it. So traces create this like waterfall kind of chart in New Relic or any other like observability software that allows you to kind of dig deeper into what source and transform means. So you can see all of the internal APIs that are being called, as well as internal plugins that are being called, as well as plugins you have installed in your application that take various parts of that overall build time. So you can actually see a breakdown of what parts of your application is causing the longer build time, split up by individual APIs and plugins, which is very, very helpful. But you know, we can't really try this until we see a demo of it actually working with a Gatsby application. So I've prepared a pretty short demo for the rest of the webinar where you can actually walk through the plugin, how to instrument it, and how to use the data to improve your application. So if you want to follow along, there should be a link in the chat. There's a GitHub repo that you can clone. fork and clone with all of the relevant information. So if you do get lost, feel free to ask in the chat, or there's a pretty detailed README where you can get all of the information that I'm doing in this webinar. So yeah, let me go ahead and transition into the demo.
All right,
Awesome.
let's get to it.
So this is the GitHub repo. So the first thing you want to do is clone this into your local machine. Because of the magic of having things pulled up already, I already have my VS Code with everything just cloned. So I have made 0 changes. It's just cloned into my repo. So the first thing you want to do when you have like a existing Gatsby app and you want to install this plugin is install the plugin. So I'm just going to do npm install Gatsby build New Relic to install the plugin. Then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add some code snippets to install the plugin. So what I want to do first is I want to go into package.json and edit the build command. So the reason that I have to do this is because you have to actually enable some feature flags within Gatsby's build like command to allow Gatsby to start enable tracing for your application. So if you go into the README of the application, there should be a little code snippet that you can easily copy and paste into the scripts portion of your package.json, which I'm going to do now. Cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go into Gatsby config to actually go ahead and add the code snippet that will initialize, as well as have like the API keys for my application. So I'm just going to copy that code snippet as well and add it to my Gatsby config file. And perfect. That is done. So far, it's been pretty straightforward. I just added a code snippet to Gatsby config as well as package.json to get everything working. And then what I want to do is I want to go into the environmental variables and add in my various environmental variables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into my New Relic account. I'm going to expose my API keys because this is a free account. And also I'm going to rotate them right after the webinar. But I would not recommend
right after.
Yeah, but I would not recommend sharing your API keys to New Relic. So don't do what I'm doing. So what you want to do is go into a New Relic 1. So when you first go in here, it should be an empty kind of UI with this. And you want to click the little avatar icon and then click API keys. And then what you want to do is you want to create a key. And you want to create a ingest license key. And I'm just going to call it Gatsby webinar. And I'm going to create a key. Now that it's created, all we need to do is put in 2 different environmental variables. So the first one is the account ID or the account number, which is right here. And the license key, which all you have to do is click the 3 dots and click copy key. And I'm going to name this Gatsby webinar. Let me make that camel case because I'm cool. And then I'm just going to save it. And that's all you have to do. So all you have to do is add the code snippet to Gatsby config and change the build command and then change the environmental variable and install the plugin, of course. So I'm just going to run npm install just in case there are plugins that are not installed. And then the only thing left is to run npm run build, and then we're good. So I'm going to click npm run build. And in theory, this should work beautifully. And my theory was correct. It is building. These errors are coded in on purpose. So if you get errors, that is on purpose. We manually added those errors so we can see them in New Relic. But yeah, Dan, do we have any questions while we're waiting for this to build?
So we had a question on some swag.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I actually have we're going to run that at the end. So we'll definitely talk about that. My biggest question so far is, what do you feel like when you were building this? What do you think like the biggest help with the open source community was? Was it like the fact that you could build this kind of in the open, or did you get help from anyone else, or was it primarily led by New Relic?
Yeah, so actually the thing that inspired it was a bunch of like GitHub issue comments into this like there was this like GitHub issue about Gatsby performance issues. I think this was like 2 or 3 years ago. How this is how old the issue was, and there was like a heated. I wouldn't say it was heated. It was a passionate debate about Gatsby performance, build performance, and someone I remember there was a GitHub issue with like a screenshot of a Excel doc of like build times that someone manually compiled. And I was like, so we work in this super like tech sphere where everything is automated. And we have engineers manually recording build times and like build performance metrics via Python script and Google Doc. And I'm like, there must be a better way. That's kind of what inspired this whole idea was this way, I wanted to build a tool for engineers who are working on larger Gatsby sites to be able to see into their build metrics without ad hoc like duct tape and MacGyvering something together, if that makes sense.
Definitely, and I think that this is like a pretty slick implementation. It's more tooling than code, which I think we always like to have in this day, where it's really just a couple config files and an output right into the dashboard.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's like close enough where I think we can move on to the next step. So New Relic actually announced a new feature in our platform, which is called Instant Observability, New Relic IO. It's right here. It's a tab that you can click where you can actually get pre-populated dashboards and visualizations of your data without you actually having to like build them yourself, which is very convenient. So all you have to do to get access to this is all free part of our platform, is just go into the observability tab, instant observability tab in the very top, and then click Gatsby build. It's like one of the top ones. And let's see, it's sending trace data. So I think it should be ready soon. So all I'm going to do is click install this quick start. And then because we have already instrumented our application here with npm npm install Gatsby build New Relic, you can click done. And it should automatically deploy a quick start for you that has everything populated. So it's still sending trace data. So I'm going to wait a couple of seconds until that gets done. And then I'll go to my dashboard.
All right, so you have instant observability open right now, or the new or the one New Relic? Are they connected?
Yeah, that's a page on our website. So it's
Okay.
just like the top tier menu item.
Okay.
It is still sending trace data. I don't know how fast my internet is, but
And this build is completely local, right? Not happening in Gatsby Cloud at the same time.
So it can happen in Gatsby Cloud. All you have to do is specify the environmental variables and enable the feature flag to build it. If we have time, I will deploy it into Gatsby Cloud. But it's super simple to do it in Gatsby Cloud. All the tracing and stuff is enabled in Gatsby Cloud, not by default though. So you do have to enable it by setting a environmental variable. But it is great. So New Relic, we actually have a fork of our documentation site that we have hooked up with our plugin that is running on Gatsby Cloud. So if an engineer wants to test like a new feature or something, they can go ahead and like test it with our plugin to like see the impacts to the various build times and like the overall build performance of their change.
Do you have that forked into a different workspace, or do you just use
We use our internal workplace.
Okay.
We have a
you just have a PR view. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We still
It is
sending
taking
tracing
this.
data.
Yeah. Let me just go into the see if there's like still data that's like populated. Okay, cool. This might be hanging or something because the data is already in New Relic 1. So this is what you get landed in after you click instant observability. And there is some, oh wait, I can kind of talk about a little bit of swag. So if you actually like take a screenshot of this and tweet at New Relic and at Gatsby.js with the screenshot, we will get you a free a power bank. So if you're interested, go ahead and tweet away. But basically, yeah, this is the whole dashboard. So it has multiple pages. So I'm gonna quickly kind of go over what each page does and like how this can be super useful. So the first page is a overall like overview of the build times. So this is the build time ID of our latest build. It took 160 seconds. And these are the various steps of the build process. So you can see like bootstrap time, instantiation time, benchmark, pre-initialization, pre-bootstrap, et cetera, et cetera.
So you're
So
literally seeing each step in totality right there. That's
mhm.
the 160 seconds. Okay.
So everything combined together is 160 seconds. But what New Relic allows you to do is break this down into what steps add up to 160. So here we can see like the post build, pre-build, like you can see like how much of that, what percentage of the overall build time is allocated to each step. And by itself, this is not the most useful, but like when you are comparing builds with different functionality and you want to see what build time impacts a certain change will have, you can actually clearly see if something slows down the post build step or the instantiation step or the pre-build step. If you want to see the differences when you make a certain change in your code base, this is the perfect visualization, if that makes sense. So the next part of the dashboard is the APIs and plugins section. So this is really cool because this is all visualizations of our tracing data. So you can see right here all of the various internal APIs that are being called to like bring the website together. So there's on post build, create pages, process nodes. But here you can see that 95% of the time is spent on post build. So I'm just gonna click on it to hide this particular data point because it is so overwhelmingly large. And then we can now see like the rest of the breakdown pretty easily without having to squint your eyes. And here you can see also all of the plugins that are taking both internal and external plugins that we're using and how it contributes to overall build times. So yeah, these are the various components. And this is really cool because these are all of the individual API calls that are being used to actually create your website. So these are the individual steps and how long each API call takes. So you can see a granular breakdown of every single call that that Gatsby makes to make your website come together.
What are some of those big ones there?
Build. So build is
Makes
I
sense.
think the catch-all span
Yeah.
that Gatsby uses to build your application. So that's not the most useful. But if you look at something like this, run API or run page queries, these are individual steps that like your application, your Gatsby framework is doing to bring it all together. So run page queries obviously runs all the GraphQL queries to get all the data to build your page. And run plugin Gatsby build New Relic obviously runs the plugin. So it's pretty like self-explanatory, like what each span does, because it's just the name of the particular API or step to build your website, if that makes sense. So all of this data, you can actually see the raw data if you go to the traces UI. So if you click the handy dandy link in the dashboard, you can actually see the traces UI of our New Relic One application. So if you click into the individual trace, it takes a second to load because it's loading, I think, 52,000 spans, or yeah, it's a lot of spans. You can actually see the waterfall chart of literally every single API call and span needed to bring your website together, which is really, really cool. You can see, like, for example, when we say run page queries, like, what does that mean? And then we can actually see into what that process does, which is just a lot of resolving GraphQL. It's very, very a lot. But yeah, that's kind of like the awesome part about being able to visualize traces is that if something is going kind of really wrong, you can actually see deeper into what is causing that through traces. So yeah, that is traces.
All right, one live question we have, and I think I can answer this, is it possible to customize the types of logs that are sent to New Relic? For instance, if I want to send my Lighthouse score of different builds to monitor the correlation between both over time, is it possible to achieve that on the plugin?
Of course it is. So because we built everything using open source like log forwarders and different like parts of our platform, you can actually send your Lighthouse score in multiple ways. So you can send it as a log, but you can also send it as directly into New Relic, the database, as a metric point. So I'll actually go over that later in the. I can go over it right now because I
Perfect.
mean, it's in the same dashboard, is if you go into metrics, you can actually see the direct data points that we send to New Relic. So these are just straight up like numbers that we send to New Relic for every build to monitor various things about our build. So to add this is trivial. It's just 1 or 2 lines of code that you can send. So you can send any data you want associated with your build to New Relic. It's just a giant database. But yeah, that's kind of like API as a plugin. Actually, that leads into metrics. Yeah, that's kind of like the next point I want to talk about is metrics are basically data points that we send to New Relic to track various things. So you can actually see like how many images are on our website, which there's 14. You can see number of JPEGs, GIFs, or GIFs. Sorry if I offended anyone by that. And you can also see overall numbers of images here. And you can track a lot of like metric points here. So when we actually push like a more efficient build in a couple of minutes, we can actually use this UI to compare and contrast how our improvements into our code is reflected in the measurements here. So I think I want to go over one more thing before we have to rebuild, which is logs and two more things, logs and JavaScript bundle size. So this is our UI for logs. This is just an embed of our more larger UI, but you can see the latest logs created by your application. Here you can track things like errors that we have in our application that still allows it to build, but are errors, as well as just things that pop up in your logs when you're building in a Gatsby site. And the cool thing about New Relic is that it has a lot of built-in functionality to extract data from your logs immediately. So let's take this for example. Do you see the number of pages and nodes here? So this is not actual data points that we send to New Relic. We use regex to actually extract it from our logs. So if you actually look, so let me go into the logs UI as well as the query itself. So let me view query. So you can see right here that we use our own version of regex which is just regex with like a couple of more syntax. Like there's an R that like precedes it. We can actually extract the number of nodes and pages from a line of like log, which is really cool. So you can get any type of information you want through regex and logs. So you can have this widget that constantly runs this regex query to extract information you find useful in your log. So let's say, for example, you wanted to send your Lighthouse scores with a console log in your Gatsby application. You could easily write a regex expression that could just extract that Lighthouse score and put it in a nice dashboard for you to view in one view. So you don't have to actually go hunting for it in your logs UI. But yeah, let me show you the logs UI really quickly, just to show you what it looks like. So it's basically a large database where you can just see a bunch of data. But the cool thing about New Relic is that it is searchable. So let's say you wanted to think about like transforming nodes. So if I type in transform, it will get all logs that have the word transform in it. So it's super easy to like query logs. So later when we make another build, we'll be able to use this UI to compare and contrast how different builds have different times for source and transforming nodes just by searching in this handy dandy search bar. But yeah, the next thing I want to go over in our dashboard is JavaScript bundle size, which is really cool. So something that our team had a little bit of trouble with when we were deploying our very large website is measuring and kind of reducing our bundle size for our Webpack. And the reason is because when you have a large Webpack and a bundle size for your for Webpack, it can really slow down both the build of your website as well as your website for your end user. So what you want to do is reduce it as much as possible. But sometimes it's really hard to get like a granular view into what exactly is causing the bundle size to be big and how to reduce it. So what this handy dandy thing does is it actually lists the size before compression, after compression, and during compression. It actually can break down the size of various parts of your Webpack. So if you're not using a particular thing, like for example, like I took out IO Dash in my app because I wasn't using it anymore, but it's still in our Webpack build. We can actually identify these and delete these to reduce the size of your Webpack. So it's really useful to see what's inside, what's contributing to your overall Webpack like bundle size, and then like allows you to delete various things to make it more efficient. And we use the handy dandy Gatsby plugin Webpack Bundle Analyzer to actually get this data. But you can get this all in your dashboard automatically through our plugin. So yeah, now that we have gone through the basics of the dashboard, I want to go ahead and de-jankify the website a little bit. So it turns out that I added a couple of things that make the website a bit janky. So we're gonna do things, but make it a little bit more efficient by turning the feature flag for janky site to false. And that does a couple of things. So if you look at Gatsby node, we have this whole logic for janky site versus non-janky site. So we made like mapping each of the nodes really, really inefficient when it's janky, and we made it normal when it was non-jankified. So it should be a lot more efficient in our build. Also, what we're going to do is we're going to go into our product single template, which basically builds a website for every single product in our database. And what we're going to do is we're going to comment this out. So this is an extraneous GraphQL query that's going to slow down our build. So we're going to just comment this out. And then whenever we do all of this, it's basically just to prove that like when you make changes to your website, there's going to be changes to your measurements in our observability platform. So all we're going to do to kind of rebuild it after we made these changes is do Gatsby clean, because we don't want it to cache, because we want to like kind of measure the difference in build times, like with the changes and without the changes. We're just going to do npm run build like last time, and then wait for it to build. So hopefully that will show us the various improvements that our feature flag flipping off will make. But yeah, that's kind of like what we're working on.
It's definitely a cool way
questions,
to
Dan?
do the differences. Yeah, we have one about the size of team. So is the use of this plugin recommended for small sites and for small dev teams? I would say in general, there's always going to be benefit to checking out what you're pushing into your code and how it affects build time over time. So even like, yes, a minute build time is like getting that and optimizing it. And spending a lot of time might be a little bit of a fool's errand. There's totally, I think, tons of actual advantages to just making sure that you're measuring. If that goes from a minute to 2 minutes, it might seem like not a big deal, and then like over a couple of months, all of a sudden it's 5 minutes, and you don't know why. If you'd have been using a tool like this, that never would have risen over time.
It's a good way to actually stress test your applications. I think that's the best way that I can put it. So whenever you're building like so I talked to a bunch of like open source contributors to like different Gatsby themes or like boilerplate websites, and if they want to make their website accessible to those who want to add a lot of content, or you're just curious, you're like, do you think that my website can handle maybe 20,000 blog posts instead of 5? Like, let me see, like that. It's really useful to kind of test hypotheses to figure out like, can my website scale? Because this can tell you very quickly if it can scale or not based on like measuring things like memory usage, or like when you make a small change, you can measure the percentage difference of the build time to figure out, okay, is this scaling by 1 or
Linearly or exponentially.
exponentially? Exactly. But yeah, it's very useful for that. But it's also cool, I think, to see inside of what Gatsby does when it builds. And it's like a fun thing to add within 5 minutes, just to be like, ooh, am I using any, is there any plugins that are taking insane amounts of time that I need to get rid of?
Definitely.
Oh, I can actually give you like a fun story while we're waiting for it to build.
Yeah, sure.
So New Relic actually was using Amplify, AWS Amplify to host our documentation and all of our Gatsby sites. And something that we did to evaluate like a new hosting provider, because we were having a couple of issues with speed with Amplify, was actually collecting a lot of telemetry data on how our websites perform when we hosted it on their platforms. So if you're like considering like various technologies when to work with your Jamstack or to host your Gatsby website, this is a good way to test it. So you can deploy your website with the plugin on various platforms to measure like how quickly or how efficiently it's being deployed. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Uh,
Daniel, what platform did you end up going with?
I don't know. I'm kidding. We went with Gatsby Cloud. We are using Gatsby Cloud to host all of our websites.
All right, this on post build is.
I love the
almost ready,
clarifying
almost ready.
question though.
Yeah, I know. I got. Thanks for the setup.
No, we love Gatsby Cloud here. We use it a lot. Yeah.
Still taking away.
It's taking a little bit of time, but
Wait until you really unjackify it and make everything false.
I mean, it is creating a couple hundred pages, so maybe that's probably why. But you know, it's really, really fast for the end user. So I guess we got to sacrifice it. But also, I want to just mention that this is not from cache. This is from scratch. So I did Gatsby clean before this. But if you do build it from a cache, it'll be a lot faster.
Yeah, so every time you're building here, you're clearing everything and running a clean build.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sending trace data. We get the next build.
Oh, it's already there. So you
We
can see
did.
already that the next the data. I don't know if it's done sending trace data. Give me a second. Can't tell. Oh yeah, I think it's sent. I think it hangs a little bit, but I can start talking about metrics since it's already sent. So you can already see right here that so the difference in build times for some reason. Wait, let me make sure that my environmental. Okay, cool. So you can see right here that you can see like the memory used has gone down. There's no MDX files, but you can actually see like compare and contrast various builds based on the changes you made to your website. For some reason, it's showing a larger a memory heap, which is not supposed to be like that, but this is a live demo, so yay. But in theory, you should be able to see like the more efficient site building with like better memory usage. But yeah, you can actually compare and contrast various data points that are created by your website just through the various dashboards. So you can see here in logs, we can see the number of pages like we went over before and things like that, like in our website. So yeah, we can use the plugin to measure a bunch of things on our websites really easily with just dropping stuff in.
Daniel, someone asked if you forgot to save your last command.
Oh, I forgot to save the last command. Oh, that's really embarrassing.
There you go. It was
when I was doing the
twice.
demo, when I was doing the demo yesterday with the Gatsby folks, I literally forgot to save my package JSON, so it wasn't working. I couldn't figure out why. I need to enable autosave.
All right, I
That is
like
like
that up.
on
So
my to-do-
let's build that again. We don't have to.
Okay.
We can go on to the next thing, or at least talk.
Oh yeah, let
about-
me run it again real quick. Hopefully that will dejankify it. Gatsby, no.
Dave Pettin, thank you.
Thank you. Means a lot. Yes, we run build. Yeah.
All right. Do you have images on the site?
So we don't have a lot of images in this website because we did not code it. That is the reason. But the cool thing about our plugin is that it can track all of the images that are being processed through like Gatsby's internal image API, as well as just images that are displayed on your website to track like how it affects your build times. I mean, we do have a couple of images, but we don't have enough where we can actually test optimizations for like image processing. So you can actually see in the metrics here, you can select the number of images that we have. We have like 14. But the reason that we have this feature is because in our documentation site, we have like thousands of images on our website. And then there was a PR a couple months ago to our Gatsby theme that would have accidentally duplicated the number of images like on our website by accident. So like the plugins like that in your Canary releases or in your PRs can be really helpful because you might make like a accidental mistake that accidentally forces your Gatsby image plugin to process twice as many images for no reason. So you can actually, through trend lines and through the dashboard, you can kind of track, would this change actually make this much of a difference in build times? And if it doesn't make sense, you might have an issue with your code. That's kind of like the main use case that I have for images.
That's pretty neat. There's a lot of like cost tools that do this, like
Mhm.
Cloud Checker and things like that. It's very similar way to look at it around the cost of like productivity going down based on longer builds.
Yeah, definitely.
Does this data get automatically piped in, or do you have to refresh? So sock it open.
So it gets automatically piped in, but it hasn't. Let me see if it's sent the metrics yet. I don't think it's sent the metrics yet because it's still
Okay.
collecting JavaScript bundle sizes. But when it comes in, it's automatically refreshed. And the great thing about this is that all these visualizations are created with something called Nurgle. So it's really easy to create your own like visualization. So all you have to do if you want to just edit this or if you want to add more data or something is edit the query. So this is this is very, very similar to a SQL query. So literally here, what I'm doing is I'm adding the various like metrics that is sent by our plugin together to make this whole visualization. So if you wanted to change this or like add more data or add facet it by different things, you can definitely do that by just editing this command. So it's very like extendable to fit your use case. Like this is just a starting off point that we drop folks into so they don't get lost. But yeah, this is kind of like our way of saying this is kind of what we built for our use case, but you should adapt it to whatever you want. And you can definitely edit the plugin to send whatever data you want in addition to what we have already sending really easily. Just to create more charts and visualizations to get you more insights into your Gatsby site. Cool. It's still building, but it's finally, okay, I think it's faster now. Oh, it already sent. Okay, cool. There we go. Look, it's 109 seconds.
There we go. You got an optimization.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we got the optimization. Let me check the metrics though. Oh yeah, so I think yeah, this is the original JavaScript bundle size, and then this is what we ended up with. So you can see the reduction in JavaScript bundle size here in this visualization. So this is the original aired one, and this is the one with the optimizations. So you can actually visualize the changes that like your code changes make to your overall build performance. But I want to showcase one more thing before we end the webinar, which is our logs UI again, and the ability to get data and then compare data from your various builds using our logs. So something that we can do is we can actually search for any log and compare it to a previous build. We have a lot of extra logs, so let me just scroll through. So let's say we wanted to compare and contrast our various builds, this step, the success building HTML renderer. What we can do is we can just search for it in our UI and then compare and contrast how long each one took for the different builds. And when you click on each log, we can get a bunch of information about it. For example, where it comes from, which build it comes from. So the feature flag right here is a customizable variable that you can set in your config JSON file. So if you go into Gatsby config right here, you can actually add custom tags to mark things as, so you can actually like correlate certain builds to certain things you did to the code. So I just set it equal to the janky site environmental variable. So you can actually see in the New Relic 1 UI here, false, which means that the jankiness wasn't turned on. So you can actually get a lot of data, and you can actually add data into the plugin just by adding various data into your configuration here. So yeah, you can get super deep details into your logs and kind of search and correlate the data through our search feature in our logs UI. So yeah, that's kind of like the last thing I want to showcase.
That's pretty phenomenal. We have a couple minutes left. One thing, can we run the same build on cloud and actually look at the local versus the cloud? Or do you have it hooked up to another dashboard?
I think let's try to speed run it. I think I can do
Yeah.
it. That's VJS. And if we don't get it done, we can try it another day, or it will be on a blog post that we publish together.
Perfect.
So let me log into my Gatsby Cloud. Add a new site. Get
The only thing I can think of that you might have to change in your code is the environment variable stuff.
exactly. Printed. Let's see if this will work. This is speed running right here. Okay. I have the account IDs. Oh, and the environmental variable. Cool.
I was
I'm
going to
just
say you have it
copy
all
that.
in environment.
Oh, this might actually work. Oh, that's
I was
pretty
going to
cool.
say it actually will be pretty quick. You're going to have to take those out.
License key is this one. Oh no, I messed it up. Okay, license key is this one, and then account ID is this one. And then save. I think the preview variables are the same, so I'll just
Yeah.
copy those. Oh, there's another. So when you deploy this on Gatsby Cloud, you need to also add another variable here. So you need to add a variable to enable tracing. So let me get that from my Slack. 1 second.
And maybe I can try too.
And then, so you need to put Gatsby _ open _ tracing _ config _ file. It's not the most intuitive
Easily.
intuitive environmental variable. I had to search for it for a second. And you need to paste in the actual config file from the package, the build command here. And theoretically, this should work. I'm gonna save it. Oh, I don't think I saved it in the. I don't think the preview matters actually.
I was going to say, I don't think it matters.
And I'm gonna create the site. Let's hope and pray that this works.
We'll figure out probably a minute on that first build, maybe a little less.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe this might actually work, like the speed running of it all. I love it.
Daniel, you're definitely jinxing it.
Oh gosh, darn it.
Yeah. Do you have a dashboard quick of what this looks like in the actual one app for New Relic?
Yeah.
Because I know that looked a little bit different, and it might be a little more familiar to anyone that's used New Relic in the past.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? Sorry, one more
Yeah,
time.
like in the actual, yeah,
This
the
one?
dashboard here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's in a different dashboard, but maybe.
Yeah, so we kind of deprecated that dashboard because
There
we
you
wanted
go.
to use
All right, that's
IO.
why.
So this is more easily accessible. And there were some issues with tracing that we had to resolve. And IO kind of magically appeared in front of our eyes and was like, we will solve all of your bugs that I don't want to follow up on Jira on. And I was like, yes. So that's kind of why it's different than the blog post. But the one that will be coming out on Gatsby's blog will have the updated like instructions and stuff. But this is the easiest way to get Gatsby build visualizations in New Relic right now is just click the instant observability and click the Gatsby button right here.
Okay, all right, that makes a ton of sense. And it's got the same amount of like customization, I guess, that we had before.
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, like can you make blocks and stuff and drag them?
Oh
You can,
yeah,
right?
yeah. This is using our base dashboards. There's an error.
See,
Oh, I jinxed it. Oh gosh darn it. Okay. Cannot find module user app. I might have to ask Generosa on like how I can mod. Let me ask for you.
the only thing I can think of is that config environment variable wasn't pasted right.
Oh, yeah, that might be it. I think it was though, because it's the right one. It's under node modules, but
All right,
let me try another one. Reveal. Oh, it's just node modules. Okay, cool. I think the dot slash is messing it up. Let me edit that. Oh yeah, do we have any other questions while this is building again?
there are no other questions open that are around this. Rory's helping us out a little bit from the bleacher section on there.
Oh yay! Hey Rory.
So the Zipkin file is in the plugin and it's not in the package.json.
The Zipkin file, the plugin.
He's revealing the magic.
Oh. Oh, I didn't install the plugin. No, this should work because it's in the to instrumented branch. Huh. Okay. Well, we have 1 minute left. I don't think we'll get the
I don't think
instrumentation
we're gonna
done for
get
the
there
cloud
either.
because I jinxed it. But yeah, I please if you followed along, if you just take a screenshot and tweet at GatsbyJS and at New Relic, you can get a free power bank. But other than that, yeah, please look forward to like a blog post from me and Dan around this plugin. And hopefully in a couple months, we can come out with like a 1.0 release of the plugin. That's like the goal.
Absolutely, everyone feel free to use it and give feedback so we can get it out the door in GA. All right, everyone, thanks for stopping by. Daniel, New Relic team, certainly thanks for stopping by and helping us out today.
Nice. Well, thank you so much.
Enjoy. Have a good one, everyone. Goodbye.